Right. So we can resume our discussion of the concept of discourse. And I mentioned that the word discourse is used in different fields in language studies and social sciences. And especially in critical theory, the word discourse is identified with the work of Michel Foucault. Although the word discourse now is used very liberally everywhere, and we see very frequent use of the word discourse, but somewhere the meaning of the word discourse also say pays some kind of allegiance to Michel Foucault's use of the word discourse. And there is a very exact translation of the word discourse in Hindi also. When we use the word vimarsh, vimarsh, say for example. And so, for example, we use the word a particular kind of vimarsh, istri vimarsh, right? That is feminist discourse. So let us talk about Foucault. Foucault uses the word discourse in three different senses. First, he talks about the word discourse, treating is the general domain of all statements. That means all statements which have some kind of effect, all statements which have some kind of effects, they can be called discourse. That is one meaning. That means one individual statement, one individual sentence can be called discourse if it has a kind of effect or some effect. And usually any meaningful sentence has a kind of effect. Here the word discourse has almost the same meaning as the word speech act, the concept of speech act, which was given by Austin, British language philosopher Austin. Austin talks about speech acts, that in our day-to-day conversation we are using number of sentences which perform some speech acts. A sentence may perform the role of persuading somebody, threatening somebody, right? Pleasing somebody. There are indirect speech acts also and direct speech acts also. If I say that I like ice cream, then this is direct speech act, but indirectly I am also saying that can you get me an ice cream? So that is the, so that means all speech acts can be considered statements, and for that reason an aspect of discourse. That is one meaning in Michel Foucault. And the other meaning is probably more important. The other meaning is when we think about a group of statements, and these group of statements have some kind of common element, some kind of system to them, some kind of systematicity. That means there is a group of statements, and this group of statements comes from maybe different fields, from literature, from social sciences, from religion, and so on. But we can see some common thread there. We can see some common element there. We can see some common system there. So that is also what is called discourse. And here we can say that discourse of environmentalism. Discourse of environmentalism. That means somebody may talk about the need to protect the planet. Somebody may talk about organic farming. Somebody may talk about not using artificial devices too much. Somebody may talk about building houses in a particular manner. In other words, you have this discourse of environmentalism, which is coming from different sources. You see its articulation in different statements, but you see some common thread between all those different statements. And that's why we can say that discourse of feminism, discourse of communism, discourse of environmentalism, and so on, right? And here, very quickly, we can also recall somebody like Mikhail Bakhtin. Bakhtin also used the word discourse, but for Bakhtin, discourse was always a kind of dialogic affair where one enters into a kind of relationship with somebody else, or into a kind of conflict with somebody else, or into a kind of disagreement with somebody else, or into a kind of contestation with somebody else. So discourse of environmentalism, right? It may come from a government body, it may come from a government body, and the government body may be thinking about some private players. And similarly, private players can also be talking about environment and maybe presenting their material in a very official manner, right? So there, Bakhtin in passing, where your speech is always oriented towards somebody else, towards some other group, towards some other point of view, towards some other viewpoint, so on. So discourse, one meaning, any statement, any sentence which has meaning, which has effect. Second meaning, discourse refers to group of statements. And there you can see some system to that group of statements. The third meaning refers to the institutional nature of discourse, where something is coming through certain institutions, and those institutions create certain practices, those institutions create certain rules, those institutions create certain restrictions. So that is the third meaning of the word discourse. So first meaning, any statement, any sentence which has meaning, which has effect. Second, group of statements where you can see some system. And third, where some institutions become the carrier of discourse, right? And Foucault's work is a very important study of different institutions. That means the role of different institutions. These different institutions may be, say for example, prisons, they may be they may be the medical profession, they may be state authority, and so on. Another aspect of discourse in Foucault is that discourse does not remain stable, right? And from the point of view of literature, it also means that we cannot make a proper neat distinction between non-literary and literary discourse. So if there is a certain opinion which is coming from a religious preacher, and it is coming in the form of a sermon, maybe a similar opinion comes from a novel or from a play, and together they will make a certain kind of religious discourse. In other words, when cultural materialist critics discuss all those other works which are considered non-literary, they are influenced by this idea also, that literary and non-literary discourses circulate at the same time. Second aspect of Foucault's work is that he also talks about, say, power, knowledge, and truth. And this is extremely important because his work is a very important analysis of power and also of truth. So what is he saying about truth? That truth is of this world, and every society has its own regime of truth, its own politics of truth, right? And what he says about power and knowledge. And here also you can see that for Foucault it is power which is more important. You must have heard one old proverb. That proverb is knowledge is power. Foucault would rather make you believe that power is knowledge. That means it is power actually which determines the course of knowledge. So for example, if something is considered important, or something is considered an important discovery, or if something is considered an important form of knowledge, if it does not suit the powers that be, or the power equations of the time, or the regimes of truth and power at a particular point of time, then this knowledge cannot be authenticated. That means power also decides the nature of knowledge. And we often see that how there are always debates about the nature of history, how there are debates about the nature of knowledge. And even when you think about our own system of medicines, then a lot of time is spent, money is spent, funding is given to authenticate what is considered genuine knowledge. On the other hand, also excluding or eliminating other forms of knowledge. There may be some grain of truth in them, but that is not considered. So for example, when we think about history of medicines, then there are other forms of medicines which are considered spurious, right? So again, it relates to the question of power. Then Foucault also talks about power relations, power relations. And his is not an analysis of power where power starts from the top and comes to the bottom. Rather, he's talking about power in all social relations, in all examples of human interaction. So there is this view of power where power is everywhere, everywhere, and it comes from everywhere, right? What happens in knowledge? In knowledge, one tries to subjugate the object of knowledge. And that means power in a way generates knowledge. Think about the implications of this view for post-colonial criticism. In post-colonial criticism, you often talk about Western writers, theorists, scientists, how they try to colonize different forms of knowledges which were there in the colonies. So think about the system of classifications of plants. When colonial masters went to different places, and you can talk about India also, we know that certain plants had certain medicinal value. We know that certain plants had their own role in our culture. We know that certain plants had their own role, a very important role in our systems of indigenous medicines. But when those plants were seen by the colonial masters or people who were trying to classify those plants, they tried to classify those plants according to their system of knowledge. So what is Sita Asoka in India? It is given a very different botanical name by a different system of classification. And so are many other plants. And today we talk about many Adivasi groups or many of those indigenous groups in different countries where their knowledge systems, which were native knowledge systems, they were destroyed by the colonial masters. And here you can see this relationship between power and knowledge, right? So this is another important aspect of Foucault's work. Then Foucault also talks about a kind of internal mechanism in discourse. That means he also talks about the structures and rules of discourse. And there is a word which is very important: archaeology, right? Archaeology. Foucault uses the word archaeology, and archaeology refers to structures and rules of discourse. So, what are those rules of discourse? So, first of all, discourse excludes certain categories and also it includes certain categories. But let us first talk about some elements of discourse. And there are three, four terms are important. One important term is statement. Statement. Statement is the building block of discourse. Just as you have a brick in a building, so brick is like a statement. Brick is like a statement. Discourse is like that building, and brick is the building block of discourse. So all statements, all statements which have meaning, which have effect, they are called statements, and they are the building block of discourse. One thing. Then group of discourses make up what is called episteme. Episteme. There is another word, episteme, and there is a related word, archive. So, for example, a particular age also has its archive of knowledge. A particular age also has its episteme. And we know that Foucault talked about a discontinuous view of history. So maybe during the Elizabethan period, a particular kind of episteme was working. A particular kind of archive was working. And it is not possible for a writer or a thinker to go beyond that archive, to go beyond that episteme. It is only at a later period, it is only in a later age that one can see the earlier archive or the earlier episteme clearly. And so that means knowledge also jumps through these discontinuous lurches. History also moves through these discontinuous lurches. So a statement and different statements, they produce episteme or they produce what is called an archive, right? An archive suggests, archive of a certain age suggests what can be said, what can be said in which form, and what is counted as worth knowing, and what is counted as worth remembering. So many things which we cannot even think today. Many things which we cannot even think today. Many things which we cannot even say today. Many things which we cannot express today. Many things which cannot express in usual forms of expressions. It is because of the archive of our age. And similarly, if during the Elizabethan period, many people could not say certain things, could not express certain things, could not say, believe in certain things, it was because of the archive of that particular period. We may consider it very laughable that how is it that everybody believes in the, if everybody believes in ghost, how everybody believes in a kind of sign which suggests divine existence, where you have a sign of everything, where you have the entire world operating as a kind of text, and that text is leaving certain signs, where everybody believes in the idea of the supernatural. So many things which you consider superstition today, many things which you consider unfounded beliefs today, They were part of the archive of a particular age. So archive of an age also poses certain limits on knowledge. So maybe 100 years from now, and this is the implication of Foucault's work, 100 years from now, we'll see, say, a different age, looking at this age differently. And if you see a film like PK, now PK looks at our world very differently, because say maybe the archive of this particular world, he is able to see the archive of this world from a different perspective. Others are not able to see that archive. So the epistemic structure of a particular age may be very different. And Foucault is talking about, say, discontinuities in history. He has a discontinuous view of history, where one is not talking about progress as such, but sometimes knowledge or history moves through lurches, right? Similarly, another important thing in discourse is there is the concept of exclusion in discourse. And what is that concept of exclusion in a discourse? There is always some taboo, some prohibition on what can be said, some prohibition, some taboo on what can be said. And in different periods, we have different kinds of taboos. That is one aspect. Another aspect of discourse is, and in our period especially, somebody who's saying something or something which is coming from somebody, that person should be sane, not insane. And here it is very interesting to see that in a different period, in a different age, the concept of sanity and insanity was not so clear cut. That means people who were insane, they were also considered divine. And we did not have this kind of very cruel mechanism where sanity and insanity was very clearly distinguished. So this is another aspect of discourse where something is excluded from being accepted. And then this is also important to know that this distinction between truth and falsehood. Foucault is not interested in the question of truth as such. He is interested basically in the question how one arrives at one's understanding of truth. So truth and falsehood. In an earlier age, we did not have a very clear kind of distinction between truth and falsehood or fact and fiction. In the Greek period, the content of something was not considered as important as its form, right? So there is always some kind of exclusion also within discourse, where what can be said, in what form can be said, who can say that, and so on. Similarly, the other aspect of discourse is how discourses circulate, how opinions circulate, how statements circulate, how views circulate, how, for example, discourse of feminism circulates, how discourse of post-colonialism, how discourse of colonialism circulates, how discourse of masculinity circulates, how discourse of environmentalism circulates. And here, one way how it is circulated is through commentary. That means something is said about that. A commentary is written on that. Something is, and so if we think about literature, then literary criticism performs the role of that commentary. If we are thinking about Shakespeare, then in the circulation of discourses, commentary first of all. So if we consider a work of literature, then literary criticism keeps that work into circulation. The most prominent example of commentary is the commentary on Bible. So if you have Bible, then there is commentary on Bible. If you have Shakespeare, there is commentary on Shakespeare, and commentary on Shakespeare takes the form of literary criticism. So it keeps Shakespeare in circulation. It keeps Bible in circulation, and we can talk about many other aspects of discourse also. So environmentalism and commentary on environmentalism, masculinity, commentary on masculinity, coming from different sources. Similarly, another aspect of circulation of discourse is the role of what is called academic disciplines. Academic disciplines. Now, all academic disciplines make certain rules. If you are a student of literature and you want to publish in a very good journal, then academic discipline makes certain rules that you must write in this particular manner. You must quote other writers. These are different practices that you must take into account the work of others. You must write in a clear language. You must use the language which is becoming of your subject. In other words, you must use the terminology, the jargon, the discourse of that particular subject. So, and of course, if you are associated with a university, then you also become possibly qualified to say something. So the role of academic discipline is also very important in circulating discourses. And then also there is a concept called rarefaction. RAREFACTION, rarefaction. Rarefaction means there can be unlimited number of statements, something which can be said, but usually one is limited by societal and cultural norms or personal norms to say something. So even if there is a very possibility of unlimited number of statements about something, ultimately it turns out that there are few statements. So that means there is what is called rarefaction of discourse, right? See, during the election period, ultimately the entire message comes to this idea of rarefaction, 2-3 points which become important for the voter. And yet another aspect of discourse, how it is circulated, is that discourse is also circulated through rituals. That means if a statement is coming, the statement also comes through different rituals. If somebody says, I pronounce you husband and wife, or I pronounce you guilty, or I pronounce you not guilty, then obviously this is also part of ritual. This will have meaning only when it is pronounced by a judge or a priest. That means this is important, that a certain kind of ritual is also part of that discourse. So the role of ritual also becomes important. And we can say that when a particular discourse emerges, it emerges through circulation, it emerges through rarefaction, it emerges through commentary, and it emerges through different rituals. We have already seen that how Foucault's ideas especially had great impact on cultural materialism and new historicism. Right. So we close our discussion at this point. Thank you very much. I end the meeting now.